in 1973, the movie The Exorcist came out, which at the time led to some rather visceral reactions in the theatre.
The manager of the National Theatre in Westwood says that there indeed are at least a dozen people who faint or become ill during every showing. But The Exorcist is still drawing sellout houses for every performance, complete with lines around the block.
And the controversy caused by this movie and its relation to the Christian faith led to renowned evangelist Billy Graham to denounce the film, which added more fuel to the fire. But in the wake of The Exorcist, more and more high-profile and critically acclaimed religious horror movies were released. I mean, there was The Omen, there was The Exorcist 2, then there was The Sentinel, The Omen sequel, The Fury, and then that led to The Changeling, Rosemary's Baby, and then with The Exorcist finally premiering on cable, the public was really kind of beaten over the head with the idea that something evil was lurking amongst them.
Satanism, devil worship, is being practiced all across the country.
We have all types of perversion going on that's affecting America.
Perverse, hideous acts that defy belief. Suicides, murders, and the ritualistic slaughter of children and animals.
But the seed that sprouted this hysteria was planted much earlier. These movies just fertilised the ground. Now, it is true that child abductions and murders were on the rise in the 1970s, and with an ever-present financial strain on the American economy caused by the gas crisis, more children than ever were being placed into daycare on account of both parents needing to hold jobs. And so kids were far more open and vulnerable to influences outside the normal confines of the nuclear family. And the media weren't blind to this. See, with the popularity of heavy metal music, violent movies, and the supposed satanic influence in children's toys and entertainment,
So 80% of all toys on the market have a cultic influence, and these are the most popular.
It says here that it actually makes the wings move, so let me look at that.
And do you remember those verses in the book of Revelation about the flying beast with the riders on them?
This could actually be taken from Revelations.
Sure, it looks like it.
more stories of Satanism and cult behaviour were being pushed in the news.
Is connected to devil worship. That's the focus tonight of Lonnie
Warning
Larkin's special
signs
report
of
on
satanic
Satanism.
behavior
But we want to
may
warn you
appear.
now that
Seems
some
to be on the source of all this is the apparent practice of Satanism.
You're going to be the
Worship of the devil.
With story after story seeming to confirm parents' worst fears, they reacted quite fervently to the news coverage, and with these stories gaining traction, more and more and more were being produced, and so the cycle just spun on and on and on. But after looking into this, I believe it started in Canada with a book. Now, this is Michelle Remembers, written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pazder, with the book revolving around therapy sessions with one of his patients, Michelle Smith. And through a technique known as recovered memory therapy, Pazder claimed to have uncovered shocking and disturbing events that took place in Michelle's past. And while using intense hypnosis, Pazder claimed to have revealed that Smith was abused as a 5-year-old in satanic rituals at the hands of her mother and many, many others, where they apparently summoned the devil himself. And during these rituals, she was locked in cages, sexually assaulted, witnessed human sacrifices, and a litany of other horrors, the memories of which had simply been repressed. And conveniently, with the intervention of the Holy Trinity of Jesus, the Archangel Michael, and the Virgin Mary, the scars of this abuse were completely removed. How convenient.
The book is called Michelle Remembers. The authors are Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pazder, MD, who, acting as a psychiatrist, distracted from her bizarre childhood memories of Satan.
Now, the book, Michelle Remembers, was a bestseller, and Pazder himself coined the term satanic ritual abuse to describe what Michelle had endured. And the publication of this book led to many similar books being published, all trying to capitalise on the craze.
My next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations.
And so the idea of secret satanic cults targeting children was ingrained into the public conscience.
How come you wrote this book? Tell me about Michelle.
I looked to see, was it imagination? Was it hysteria? Where was it coming from? Was it psychosis? I have to say that the evidence is clear that this came from an experience that Michelle had. There has been nothing that I've been able to unearth that says it didn't.
Now, you mentioned evidence which proved some of the early things you feel that happened to her as a small child in Victoria, BC.
That's right.
Michelle, can I ask you what it was that came out of your mind?
The 14-month period of my life at age 5, where I was given to a group of people. They were adults doing things I couldn't understand and that frightened me, that they were involved in some type of satanic church or worship.
You were then how old?
5 years old.
Had this disturbed you before you went into therapy?
No, I had no memory of this whatsoever.
Now, today, the book has been thoroughly discredited and debunked, and the practice of recovered memory therapy has been proven to be largely ineffectual. But at the time, people really believed this nonsensical drivel.
What kind of group would you describe it as? A satanic group?
Yes, they were certainly dedicated to doing a lot of seriously frightening and destructive
Were you
things.
molested or injured or tortured in some way?
I was physically hurt a lot. At one point, they placed me in a car and literally drove it over the side of a cliff. They sacrificed animals, and they used fetuses of babies in their ceremonies.
Who are these people?
Well, they're a secret organization, they're a secret society.
Are you suggesting that her body was taken over by the devil?
No.
They attempted to try to do that type of thing. But what is essential to understand is that Michelle, as a 5-year-old child, stood up against this. This is not The Exorcist, which rips you off with fear and makes you feel some evil force can come into a room and take you over. I don't believe that.
And with the book and subsequent books like it pushing the idea that satanic cults were infiltrating communities and coming after children, it's not hard to see how that and the much stronger presence of religious horror in pop culture could sway people to think that something dark and sinister was going on behind closed doors.
And at one point, I was literally being frightened to death. At that moment, when I think I was dying, a very soft white light came and enveloped me, much like the feeling of being patted with cotton batton. And out of that, a woman came and stood beside me and took a hold of my hand, identified herself as ma mère, and basically told me to hang on, to help me understand the situation I was in and how to get through it.
Ma mère?
Ma mère.
The Virgin Mary.
That's right.
And with Pazder's book getting a shout out on Oprah Winfrey and him being consulted in cases of satanic ritual abuse, as well as his book even being used as a case study in uncovering these alleged crimes, the idea was firmly planted in the minds of not only the public but the lawmakers too. And these fears, well, they were not going away, and not one person ever stopped to look at them critically, to see them as the fucking fairy tales that they were.